Welcome back to... The what? The Premier League. No. So, Will, have you heard of the Premier League?
No, sorry, mate.
No, sorry. The 8th of April, 2021. An Arsenal 11 consisting of a Leno, Bellerin, Holding, Gabriel and Cedric back five line up in an empty Emirates Stadium for a first leg encounter against Slavia Prague in the quarterfinals of the Europa League. A pretty boring first 45 ticks by. The second half is a touch better, but not by much. However, just as it's heading for a drab 0-0, the moment arrives. Pepe is put through by Aubameyang in the 86th minute, and Arsenal have 1 foot in the semi-final. Surely. Come on, you know this club by now. 7 minutes later, deep into injury time, Slavia nick a crucial away goal. Arsenal have it all to do in Prague. The 8th of April, 2025. Exactly 4 years to the day after that game, Arsenal comfortably beat a Real Madrid side featuring the likes of Mbappe, Vinny Jr. and Bellingham 3-0 at a packed-out Emirates Stadium to give them the edge, heading to the Bernabeu for the second leg in the Champions League.
I have very wild dreams.
What a beautiful night we lived at the Emirates Stadium last Tuesday. It's a night I'll tell my future kids about, my grandkids, and if I can form a coherent sentence by that point, even my great-grandkids, if I can find them in the metaverse or whatever godforsaken thing Elon has planned for us. It was beautiful. Only word for it. And let's hope another beautiful one awaits us on Wednesday. But there was one moment that, on reflection this week, stands out to me more than most. A moment that, no matter what happens on Wednesday night, I believe is of great significance to Arsenal moving forward. And it wasn't any of the goals because, of course it wasn't. This is the different knock. We overthink everything. Let me cook. After the game, Declan Rice gave an interview to TNT Sports. He spoke about the night, the result, and then broke down his 2 free kicks. I don't know if you saw those. He said for the first free kick, the plan was initially to cross it, explaining that that's why they lined up with the 3 at the back post, but then said while over the ball, he felt it didn't make sense to cross. It was such a high line, Declan said. So to chip that, it has to be such a delicate pass. I saw where the wall was and thought, go for it. And he said the crucial moment came when Saka stood next to him, said, if you feel it, go for it. So he did. Rice ignored the captain, ignored his teammates lining up, and even ignored the instructions from set-piece coach Nicolas Jova. Initially, it looked like Jova was saying to do exactly what Rice did, whip it round the wall, but Declan confirmed on TNT that Jova was also saying to cross it. The first free kick then gave him the confidence to stand over the next one, where again, he did something unplanned. The plan this time was to shoot eventually, but it was going to be after a set from Ødegaard. However, again, standing over it, Declan felt Mbappe was too close to do that, so he hit this one first time as well, and it's the best free kick I think I've ever seen at the Emirates. Basically, you just defied everybody, says host Gabby Logan. Yeah, was Rice's response. As long-term TDKers will know, still feel you need a collective noun, and I still think knockers is funny. We've spoken a lot, as a headline, about the balance of 2 major forces on this Arsenal team. Order and chaos. And there's many scales that tell that story for Arsenal in different ways. Individual versus collective, structure versus freedom, stability versus instability, defend versus attack first. And as you know, I felt we've been just that too far over here on basically all of these. My beautiful visual learner graphs. A touch too structured, too collective focused, too safe, too predictable, too defensive, too conservative. And that's not only on the pitch, it's off it as well. Now, as I always say in these situations, predictability, consistency, stability, those things aren't bad on their own. But as we know, you can have too much of anything. You need the ability, when appropriate, to embrace unpredictability, to throw caution to the wind, in order, ironically, to win. And I think, symbolised by that Rice moment, something about that is changing at Arsenal. It's hard to perceive and be objective about, especially at a time when the Premier League is as dead as a doornail, and we'll probably only know if this analysis ages well far from now. But I think those charts are about to shift. Let's start with the players individually, many of whom, in the last weeks, months or so, I feel are playing with a newfound freedom. Martinelli, perfect example. He's taking on his man and beating him again at last. He's had Castagna on toast, Patterson was nowhere near him, and I thought he had Valverde on absolute strings against Madrid too. He was arguably our most threatening player against Brentford, in a more central zone with Tierney involved. Martinelli managed 21 shot-creating actions in his last 5 games, according to FBref, having managed 23 in the previous 15. Someone's renewed his Brazilian passport. For the assist in the Fulham game, I love to see this. Central, beating his man off the dribble, taking a risk. Probably the right thing to do in this situation. The best thing for the game model is to play this ball early out wide to Marino so you don't lose it, get into the box and allow our constructed final third shape to appear to create the most XG or whatever. But instead, he leans into the chaos, takes Pereira out of the game, accesses that dangerous area, gets Fulham turned around and shows Marino exactly where he wants that ball to go with his running. The flick for the assist, you can't train that. That's instinct. That's chaos. Saliba's performances recently. With no Gabriel against Brentford, I'd argue the right thing to do is to be even more conservative from the back, especially against the threat of Mbeumo and Wissa on the transition. But instead that game, Saliba was pulling out carry after carry, putting the ball and the team at risk to try to force the issue. He had the most final third entries, 2 take-ons and most chances created, but also won the most possessions and duels out of everyone. Here are Saliba's progressive carries in yards charted from every game he's played this season in all competitions. And there's a trend. In terms of taking the ball and driving with it, his numbers are slowly increasing over the course of the campaign, despite Arsenal's difficulties. He seems more willing to move with it and put the ball at risk. And what about our 18-year-old fullback, in air quotes for those of you listening, who is now important enough to be rested for the Bernabeu, having not made his debut until September? Miles doesn't feel like a typical Mikel player. Maybe not an Arsenal 2024 player, if I could generalise. But he's grown in stature and trust in this team, having played in every Premier League game since the Everton 0-0, apart from 2, one of which he was suspended for, and 10 of them being starts. And he is chaos ball. But Mikel seems to like it. Almost every time Miles is on the ball, he puts it at risk. Here, safe passes inside to Partey and out wide to Martinelli. Nah, mate, inside channel to Dec. Here, press from behind, easy ball back to Odegaard or Kivior, keep it simple. Nah, you know what, drop the shoulder, see you later. Here, ball bouncing, just get out to Martinelli or go back. Nah, mate, I'm going to control, shake you off, sunshine, and play a ball inside the fullback for Martinelli to chase. I mean, it's only a quarter-final against Madrid after all. Mikel isn't stopping this growing influence. Maybe this was the idea for Calafiori, but we found it with Miles. And there's other individuals as well. Trying Zinchenko as an 8, moving Rice to the right-hand side in certain games, alongside what feels like a bit of an individual explosion for him, creating the most chances out of any midfielder in the league in 2025. Even the renewed focus on the counter-attack. 2 goals against Brentford and Everton from Trossard and Partey. They're all playing with more freedom, is quite difficult to quantify. But I think there's meat on this bone. And I struggle to believe that for such a fastidious, detail-obsessed coaching staff, any of this is particularly unintentional. Especially when you look at the wider picture. I felt for a while now that despite the maybe reputation of Arsenal, we've actually been accessing the centre much better the longer this season's gone on. So I asked Scott Willis, where would this channel be without that man, to put together some numbers, and it confirmed my suspicions. We've been tagged with being risk-averse in terms of those central areas, but have a look at this. The 10-match moving average, to account for a few outliers, of Zone 14 touches for and against Arsenal. We're getting more and more central access as the season has worn on, even without some big names in our 11. And it's not just the touches. It's what we're doing in there with the ball. In terms of goal probability added based on those touches, we're trending upwards as well. Certain outlier games aside, we're playing, I think, with more desire and ability to get to those dangerous areas, or certainly less conservatism and desire to minimise counter threat. Perhaps this is to do with Saka's absence, but it's still happening. The Brentford game is a good example of this. Having players like Zinchenko, Jorginho, Waneri, even Trossard ahead of the ball in central zones, players who can take it and affect things from there, even if they're not Florian Wirtz quality-wise. There's something encouraging there. The 42 Zone 14 touches we had against Brentford would rank incredibly high on Scott's graph. In fact, off the chart. The first half of that Brentford game was, it says here, fun to watch. And that hasn't always been the case this season. Arsenal are also beginning to take more shots. Another sign of risk. If you look at this beautiful graph that I created, sorry, I'm no Scott Willis, you can see the general trend stabilising and going upwards after showing a lot of inconsistency at the start of the year. This is just in the league, but Arsenal's 3 lowest games in terms of shot volume this season all came before game week 10 against Newcastle, and taking out 2 outliers against Southampton and Leicester, 4 of the 6 highest have come after game week 21 against Tottenham. Are they good quality shots? Well, the non-penalty XG data is pretty inconclusive. If anything, the shot quality has gone down. But again, risk versus reward. You take more shots, you'll probably lower the quality on average, but you're leaning into the likelihood of a rebound or a mistake, which is harder to account for in the data. We're showing signs of what many people want Arsenal to be. Basically, a bit more fun to watch. We maybe just want to put this league season in the bag, bro, as the kids say. But there is stuff to analyse here. None of this seems to have massively impacted the goal scoring yet, but Arsenal have shifted from 8th in the non-penalty XG table about a month ago to 6th, and are now 3rd for goals and 5th for shots, both also up from the middle of the season. This team needs the shackles lifting, and that's kind of happening. And if that saying is right, that a team is a reflection of the manager, then maybe we should have seen this shift coming. Because these last 6 months, I'm telling you, something has shifted with Mikel Arteta. I'm not surprised Rice feels emboldened to make that move by the way Mikel's been acting. And something in my gut tells me that doesn't happen a year ago. I'm about to read a post-match quote about the Real Madrid game. It's either Ancelotti's or Arteta's, but I'm not going to tell you whose it is. One coach said of the game, individual moments decide all matches, and the first 2 goals of Declan Rice sum up the night. Whose quote is that? Okay, you know it's Arteta's because it would be a weird thing to bring up if it wasn't. But you watch Arsenal, you're as much a nerd as me if you're watching this. Does individual moments decide all matches sound like a Mikel Arteta quote to you? This is really hard to objectively analyse without some mad meta-analysis paid for by some big university. If you're watching, my DMs are open. So tell me what you think in the comments, because this could just be me. But just subjectively, as someone who listens to every single Mikel Arteta press conference without fail, I'm telling you, alongside the football, Mikel's overall messaging has changed. It's not that he's now ignoring the collective or not talking about the team, and it's not that he's not said or done things like what I'm about to say before in his previous 5 years. There's just more frequent moments where he's putting pressure on individuals to deliver, being more bolshy in his messaging, and making it very clear where he sees this team's next step. Mikel is ramping up the pressure. Because it wasn't only that quote post-game, but the make it happen slogan ahead of the game. It was in the club media, in the stadium, on a tifo. Ian Wright was saying it everywhere. That phrase is on purpose, obviously, and would have been discussed at length internally, so it stuck with me. Because it's quite un-Arsenal up to this point, I think. It isn't believe or our house. It's you on the pitch, go and win. Mikel would have been involved in those conversations. And if individuals win all matches, then who's he talking to? As far as my memory serves, away at Atalanta in the Champions League this season was the first time I've ever heard Mikel single out an individual player for criticism, other than Pepe when he got sent off against Leeds. He does everything to protect his players. Take that famous scene in the All or Nothing documentary after the Newcastle game. But this year, for the first time in his entire managerial stint, he didn't. And then he did it again against Bournemouth a few weeks later, again to Martinelli. In his pre-Brentford presser, there was something too. Here he is, talking about Saka.
Very important. It gives a level of threat, connection, and unpredictability that probably no the player at the moment can provide it, especially with the connection that he has already built.
Mikel said before about wanting to become more predictable as a team. He's picked out unpredictability in certain other players based on their positional variety, etc. But that's the first time I've ever heard him be so explicit and so candid of how far ahead Saka is ahead of our other forwards. And the way he says it, the way he lands on at the moment, I don't think it's meant as a compliment to Saka, nor a sign that he wants to make the team more predictable. In his interview with Patrick Davison a month or so back, he talks about the lessons from this season. He says it's taught him many things in terms of squad construction, but also a lot of lessons about the people around and far and how they react in relation to what is happening. He smiles knowingly, and I'd recommend you go and watch that clip, because I think we all know what he's referring to. In January, it's the most explicit I've ever heard him be to the media demanding transfers. He gets pretty spiky with a reporter in his pre-Wolves presser in late January, categorically denying that he's ever said no to a striker. He says his opinion is clear, and it's that Arsenal lack options in the front line, repeatedly stressing the club were working to do something. After facing Newcastle in early January and seeing Isak involved in both goals, when directly asked about how good Isak is, he said, "That's what you get when you have real quality up front." That's not his usual, I prefer not to speak about individuals, well, yeah, but we have good players too. That's pretty bullish. But perhaps most surprising of all was his recent comments about the upcoming transfer window. I've never heard Mikel in my life say this is going to be a big summer. And we've had big summers before. There are entire teams who decide media strategy at clubs like Arsenal, and someone like Mikel Arteta will know what saying something like that will do in terms of headlines around the world. He's said before he's encouraged by what they might do. They're focused on how to improve the squad, but to say he's excited explicitly, that's new. Whether this newfound bullishness meaningfully changes any of those spectrums from earlier, who knows? But I don't think the individuals, the collective, and what Mikel's saying is disconnected. Even Mikel's approach to Premier League lineups around the Madrid game have been fascinating. Because I can't imagine a Mikel of 2 or 3 years ago resting key players and basically deprioritising the league. Maybe the only analogous situation is the Bayern tie last year, and we went full strength against Villa in the game in between the two legs. We were right in the mix for the league, sure, so maybe it's a different situation. But he literally said he would give up on the Premier League over his dead body a few weeks back. And last weekend, we'd gained a point on Liverpool, still with Anfield to come. And we still rested 4 key players, including our captain and our best player. That, in its own way, is a risk I've not seen him take before. This is the guy who started Bukayo Saka against Bolton in the Carabao Cup. I'm not saying Mikel's desire to win has changed. That's never been in doubt. I'm talking about the approach. It's more heavy-handed, more explicit, more desperate maybe. It's more chaotic. And there's still one name we haven't even mentioned, Andrea Berta. He has been watching. When he signed, the statement from Josh Kroenke stood out to me. While normally you just get we're excited for him to join, we welcome him to the club and so on. What we got with Berta was we undertook a thorough recruitment process and we were hugely impressed with the level of all the other candidates, but it was Andrea's experience and the success he has enjoyed that stood out. Experience is the word they went for. Not synergy, not right fit, not right time. It's purposeful. AKA, we're going to be heavily leaning into what Andrea already does and what he already knows. We're not putting him into our machine and saying, be Edu 2.0. We're putting our trust into this guy to take us in a new direction, a senior appointment who will have his own way of doing things. And since arriving, he's been busy. We've seen heavy links from reliable reporters to the likes of Victor Gyökeres, Nico Williams, Zubimendi, and so on. The new methodology, I think off the pitch in terms of transfers at least, seems to be about making a bit of noise. And that is new for a generally pretty quiet, behind closed doors, Arsenal. The moments around the Rice free kick could be seen as a good decision before a lovely goal. And in one sense, that's all it is. But I think it's more interesting, certainly, to view it potentially as a line in the sand, where this team shifted. Because I can't remember an incident like that at Arsenal under Arteta. Can you? A player so obviously leaning out of the order into the chaos. And it translates. That Emirates atmosphere was the best I've ever experienced. The only way to describe it was feral. And it's a feedback loop. Lean into the chaos, you get a bit more back. And Rice did exactly that. 4 years ago, we were playing Slavia Prague, hoping we wouldn't chuck one in our own net. This week, we go to the Bernabeu in the driver's seat. We should be very proud about how far we've come. And it's not about ripping any of this up. But to go to that next level, we had the biggest indicator we could have had, in my view, of what we need to do. Rice has given us tangible physical evidence, in the micro at least, in the best moment of the Emirates era, arguably. Not following the plan, not consulting the XG charts, throwing the chains away, and feeling. Just feeling what is right on the pitch in the moment. As Saka said, if you feel it, go for it. And on Wednesday, and moving forward, we must. Right. Anyone got a quick sim Premier League campaign button to hand? Thanks so much for watching. If you like The Different Knock, you can support us on Patreon and get ad-free early access to each video for just £3 a month. Or for one-time support, you can buy us a coffee. Links are in the description.